I've learned a lot, and I've followed my passion.
It's Principles of Passion.
I have a dream.
With hosts Chris Thomas and Mickey Grace.
We really envision a world where all youth are inspired to find, define, and follow their passion.
This idea that we're going to be able to bring together so many creative thinkers, so many young people, and so many industry leaders.
In order to follow your dreams,
I have a dream today.
You have to put your passion first.
Coming up this episode, Chris and Mickey sit down with Carmen Scott Boria, Director of Enrichment Programs at Build Incorporated. Carmen makes sure high-quality arts, leadership, and sports programming are available for youth in under-resourced communities. And also Marilyn Pitchford, Program Manager at Heartland Alliance. Marilyn works with the Director of Strategy and Development, ensuring staff have the training and information they need to do their job at the highest quality. This is Principles of Passion. Let's get it, y'all.
Hello. Happy Thursday to everyone out there. We're here on season 3, episode 4, Principles of Passion.
Woo-hoo.
Excited. What up, Mickey? What up?
Hey, everyone out there. Super excited to also have our dope guest today.
Yes. And we have one guest that may be having some technical difficulties. Hopefully we'll get her in. But for now, I want to give an awesome introduction to Carmen Scott Boria and Matt Diaz, who goes by Swervez. I will start with ladies first. Carmen is the director over at Build. She has 15 years of experience in youth and community engagement. This includes program development, event planning, professional training. I think really her focus is youth advocacy, though, within the arts, within the entertainment space, and really just bringing that light to the community through the youth and vice versa, right? Bringing the youth to the light through the community. So we're excited to have you and hear you talk about it's really our topic of discussion, the skills gap, right? And our creative economy and really what that creative looks like. So thank you, Carmen. How are you?
Excited. I'm good. Excited to be here. Nervous, but happy to be here with you guys. I can't help it. It's who I'm nervous. I like to be behind the scenes.
You know, I tell everybody who get on here, it's literally like chatting with your college friends at the end of the day.
That's it.
I'll take it.
And a big ups to my boy Matt Diaz, a family friend, one of my brother's best friends, amazing spirit. And the reason I wanted to bring him on, he has a new album dropping this Friday. He also does our beats behind the scenes. He also helps train some of our young adults in our program on production. And so I'm just appreciative to have him on. I'm excited for this drop, these beats.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. How you doing, Matt?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the airtime. Yeah, the first Spotify album's dropping tomorrow on Friday, June 12th. So nice. Let's dig deep and find that passion and let's try to put it out there and let's use it. Let's go.
Yeah. I'll definitely throw that in the feed at some point too, in the comments feed.
Cool.
And I'll throw up a little sample so people can see what the art is, right? For sure.
There we go. Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Mickey Grace, how are you this week?
I'm good. I'm doing really good. I'm super excited. Just about chatting with you all today about the skills gap. So Carmen and Matt, I know you all know Chris, but just to give you all a little insight into me, right? I actually used to be my formal title was a talent solution specialist, but I used to be a career coach. I worked for an organization that helped 18 to 24-year-olds get connected to career opportunities. So this like skills gap, helping young adults transition, is something I've been thinking about for a very long time. So I'm just really excited to jump into this conversation tonight.
Love it. I love it. I wanted to start out by kind of giving a brief overview of what we are as an organization. People always be telling me what you got on, right? So no, people have been asking me a lot lately, Chris, what are you doing? You know, we see you on the podcast. You know, we see the posts, we see your passion. What does that mean? And so just to give the overview, this is Principles of Passion. And what we do is we bring on folks within the art, music, entertainment, sports, and culinary space that have overcome adversity, are overcoming adversity, or feel that they may overcome adversity in the future while finding, defining, and following their passion. A lot of our neighborhoods that are under-resourced, underserved, Black communities, right? Black, brown, right? But Black communities, they lack mentorship, right? They lack people coming back there to live there. And so there is no true mentorship. So what we really wanted to create here on Principles of Passion is an opportunity to bring on folks that can have like in the weeds conversations about how do we make the workforce better for our young adults out there. And so that is what Principles of Passion is. What Your Passion First does is we have a program where we take young adults through a series of workshops that's put on by community subject matter experts within the fields of expertise of our program participants. And so what we have right now is a cohort of 8. We have 2 artists that are musicians. We have 2 artists that are visual artists. We have a couple of folks that are focused on production and engineering. And so really just looking for more people for our next cohort, volunteers right now. And obviously always looking for organizations that are looking to hire entry-level people and dig into really where the skills gap is and some of the soft skills that we really want to get into today. So again, just really happy to have everyone tuning in. One thing I want to point note to that is going on this weekend. We would love for anyone that's welcome. We will be having a peaceful walk. It will be called Walk the Walk, hosted by Damian Jones, Deirdre Avery Jackson, and Danielle Kovac. We're going to be marching from Austin and Madison through Austin community to Garfield. And the point of this, and we will have demands, we have some excellent people working on what those are. The point of this is to break that dividing line between 2 communities, right? Oak Park, Austin, there's been a dividing line for a while. There's a lot of white people in Oak Park. There's a lot of Black people in the Austin community. So how do we break those lines? And, a big part of our conversation, we'll dig into that in terms of breaking the barriers with some of the skills gaps. But we'd love to have you out, Austin and Madison. I will post that in the link at some point here. 12 o'clock on Saturday is when we will start with the moment of silence. So plan on being there early if you're going to get there. It'll be about 2 hours. Again, we'll march down. We'll probably jump on the trains back. There will be a little gathering at Garfield Park. Walk the walk. Hope to see you guys out. And so without further ado, I'll let Mickey jump in and throw some questions at y'all.
Yeah, so I know right before we jumped on, guys, we were having a really good conversation about just the skills gap and what that really means. So I want to start with you, Carmen, then we'll go to you, Matt. When you hear that, right, we were talking about this language, this jargon. When you hear that, the skills gap, what comes to mind for you?
The first thing that comes to mind is Google it and make sure I understand what that means.
Right.
What is a skills gap? And then once I Googled it and just kind of thinking about it, I realized that this is a conversation that me and friends and colleagues have on a regular basis. And I recognize them even when I interview people. And it's like, what is the space in between what we think we learn and then what practice actually looks like? And so I find that sometimes there's a skills gap for sure. There's something in between that, like, we're missing the interpersonal relationships and understanding how important that is in the work that we do. But then also recognizing that we actually have those skills, but we're so focused on what we think employers want of us or what we think we're supposed to be and look and the professional and all these things that really it's like, tell me about when you were part of a group and what did that look like, right? And how did you interact how did you lead? How did you deal with conflict? Those are the things that like are way more meaningful than just, as I was saying earlier, writing a paper. And sure, I want you to prove to me that you can accomplish your goals, but I want to know your process to get there. And I think that's really important. And so when I think about skills gap, I think about people missing the fact that there are so many spaces that we're interacting with one another that showcase your skills, more so than this professional, did you look right? Did you talk right? Did you dress right? Did you, all those other things that we say are the most important, you know? So that's what I have to say about skills gap so far.
And that's so interesting to me right before, right, just thinking about going into hearing from you, Matt, because what I'm hearing you say, right, is there's this gap in between theory, right, like the idea of something, and the actual like practice of something. And I know how like a lot of young people come out of college and all they have done is a lot of theory, right? Not a lot of application. So in your profession, Matt, I'm interested in hearing you talk a little bit about like what does it look like for someone to get onboarded to working at a company like yours, and how much time do they spend in this head space versus actually in the live space doing the practical work of it all, and what matters more?
That's an interesting question. So for me, there's a couple different, I work for NCC Group. It's a cybersecurity consulting company. And I'm a practice director, and I manage a team of project and program managers that run our projects. Basically, just some background. Our consultants are basically hackers, and our clients commission us to essentially attack their web apps and things like that. So a lot of the skills that our consultants have come from like non-traditional education. Like they're learning these things themselves. They want to learn this skill. They do this for fun, right? And then they're able to come to work for us and put that passion and those skills to work as a career. And it's pretty cool to see them engage in their work, because I'm not super technical or anything like that. A lot of what me and my team do is like soft skills based work, like you were saying. But just to see them engage in their craft in a very meaningful way is very cool to see. And they're very good at using like I said, that passion to really like build something really cool that you don't see everywhere.
Man, it's so much to say. And it's so much to say because on one side of my brain, right, I'm thinking about so Carmen, at Build, are you all seeing youth and young adults? Like, are you all running workforce development programming, things like that? Can you give us a little sense of what that looks like?
Yeah. So let's see. There's a couple different ways that workforce development works. There's workforce development that has like a huge definition that comes out of state and government funding, where it's like workforce development, we're engaging young people to get jobs. But then there's also more of like the after school matters and the stipend-based programming that it's like, I want to teach you how to learn a skill, learn about a field. And it's not so much that you have deliverables as much as your deliverable is to learn, right? So there's a couple different ways that we do that at Build. And so one of our programs that I'll talk about, we got funding from the Obama Foundation with My Brother's Keeper. And we're so excited about them funding us, because basically what they're funding us for is to take young people who have passion for doing community work and who want to give back and who see mentors like us and say, one day that's going to be me. You know, I want to give back to my community. I want to take care of the kids coming up behind me. And we're helping them understand kind of like theory and the foundation of what does it mean to be a youth practitioner? What does it mean to be a mentor? What does it mean to go back in your community and be responsible to do this work? But also mentor them, and to also have them shadow and work with us very directly and understand all the different ways that we do this work and all the different levels that it happens. And so, at Build, it's really important for us to get young people to tap into where does this come from in you, and don't let go of where you came from, because that's actually what's going to drive your work, right? Like, I'm a young woman who grew up in Humboldt Park, who grew up with gangs all around me, but then also grew up with a family who was super active and engaged. And I brought those two things together, right? Like, I saw the potential in young people, and then I had professional parents, and I married those two, and now was able to work my passion, right? And I think that is really what we do at Build. And it's interesting that a lot of our participants end up working for us, because they, we work with them and they see the mentorship, and then we give them the leadership and the skill set, and then they're ready to come on board and they do really great. I mean, we've had an executive director, who came out of being a participant with us. So it's really kind of encouraging them to find value in their day-to-day experiences, and then giving them the tools to be able to engage and give back in all the different ways that can happen. So that's one example. But then we also do the traditional, like, this is what a resume is. This is how you go for an interview. This is how, you want to engage and understand how to communicate. And, we do all that. And it's great. And we're starting to build that out a little bit more, because in regards to the skills gap, we want to make sure that there is no gap for our young people. And so we do it on a couple different levels. And depending on where a young person comes in to our organization is how we then take them and give them what it is they need to be successful.
So in my mind, y'all, honestly, I have been thinking about this for a while, and I'm interested in hearing what you all think. Just hearing you talk a little bit about, like, Carmen, what you all are doing on the My Brother's Keeper side, and then also, right, traditional workforce says, hey, we need to, like, make sure they know what a resume is. Traditional workforce says we need to do some mock interviews. In my mind, though, I'm consistently wrestling with the idea of, is there a new gap? And is the new gap the distance between us teaching our young people the old way of gaining access to the old workforce and trying to figure out how do we build a new curriculum or a new experience that gives them access to the new workforce, right? So, for example, I don't know if you all are familiar with what are they called? 30-second resume, I think. Grass for Life. Are y'all familiar with Grass for Life? Okay, so Grass for Life, their organization where they help young people, right, with resumes gain access to workforce development. And one of their research, they found that employers look at resumes for less than 7 seconds. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, so if all these workforce development organizations know that employers only look at resumes for less than 7 seconds, then why are we still making our young people put together resumes? Right? That's free work.
It's a great question.
I think it's important that they know how to describe their work. Yes. I think it's important that you know what you've done and how you've done it, and if you were successful at it. But I'm just, I kind of sort of want to say, I want to keep it real. And there's a big level to this. It's who you know. Like, I think networking, like, there's so much power in network. If you can network and do good at what you do, you will never be jobless, as far as I'm concerned. So I feel like, again, there's a lot of interpersonal skills that we take for granted that is extremely important in the workforce.
So Matt, in a company like yours, right? Because I would say that you work in a creative space. In a company like yours, how important do you see interpersonal and communication skills being on the job?
So that's a great question, because like my team and the work that we do is almost 100% interpersonal and relationship based and soft skills based. I like to joke with people that like I don't have any skills. I made a career off soft skills and talking to people and just being able to have conversations and clear communication. Like that's a very important skill that you kind of, to your point earlier, like you overlook that a lot of times. Like you don't think about how you talk to people as a skill that you use in your job. Even if it is something you're doing constantly, you're not really thinking about it. So like for our consultants, many of them aren't as comfortable talking to clients and doing that side, which is where like my team comes in and we run calls, and we may not have the technical chops that they do, but we are good about communicating and talking to the clients and making sure that we're moving things along and things are going smoothly. So like one thing that I wish that they would teach young people more is public speaking, because learning to be able to be comfortable just speaking freely and flowing to other people is something that doesn't get covered enough. And it's not a skill that everyone has, but I think it is a skill that most people can learn. So like a lot of the people on my team, all the people on my team, they're very good communicators. They're very strong speakers when they're on the phone. They're very strong in person, because that's the most important thing for them. Like the actual security side, we can teach that. I can teach that all day. Like you can learn that stuff. So like looking for the right talent and right skills is big for me and my team in growing my work. But I think the public speaking aspect is huge. And like for me, I'm not a great public speaker, not super comfortable with it, but like having a little bit of knowledge about it and a little experience doing it goes a really, really long way.
Yeah, I can 100% agree. When I was a career coach, I worked and it like literally, y'all, blew my mind how widespread I saw this issue to be. So I did this work in Chicago, in LA, and also in Oakland. And one thing that I found, we work particularly with Black and brown young adults, is that a lot of these young people suffered from what I like to call poverty of speech. I would sit in front of them and I would say, okay, tell me a little bit about yourself. And they would say, well, I'm 22. I'm 22 years old. And I don't know. And some of them would it was so crazy how some of them would get like a little bit out, and then they would say, I don't know. And I would say, well, no, it sounds like you're trying to say something like this. And when I say, I either got tears or amazement. The tears, I'm like, why are you crying? Why are you crying? And they like, I just never heard anybody put it like that. Or I just never got to talk to anybody about this.
That's powerful.
When we sent them over to employment, the interviewers are like, we want to hear their story. We want to know who they are. We want to know their story. And I'm like, well, they can't even communicate their story. That is a challenge in itself. And my wondering really boils down to why is, government, why are the outcomes not attached to things like this, right? Putting funding into like storytelling, right? Like teaching people storytelling. And I really want to know, just hearing you, Carmen, because I see you like, yes. What comes up for you hearing me talk about this, and what kind of impact do you feel that transition would make on some of the young people you all serve?
Yeah. Well, first of all, anytime I do interviews with young people, I'm coaching them along the way, right? Like I'm not going to have a young person come to me and expect them to know how to behave, to know how to do this. So I make them do resume. I make them go through the whole shebang. And then I'm like, okay, you said that really well. You did this. And I want to do this. I really want to hear about that. And so I coach them through the process, and their effort to get there says a lot. And their ability to hear what I'm saying says a lot, right? And then not just the high performing, right? Like, I don't care who you are, you're going to get feedback from me about that interview. And so I think that that's super important in working with young people in general. Like, we don't just do an interview and be like, they didn't even come prepared. No, we got to coach them. Like, of course, they're not going to come prepared. They need somebody to get them to understand. And the other part around storytelling, like, that's so important. I think we totally devalue the power of story. And I think that, we have different ways that we do it at Build. We have a public speaking program. We prepare them to think about their stories and be able to share their stories. And we have different platforms that they'll do that in. And so the storytelling is extremely important. And I think about my training in organizing, and the power of a one-on-one, right? And like, the one-on-one is all about, like, how do I sit down with you and learn who you are, and then share who I am, and spend that time in doing that. And I think that's so important and like foundational in young people. And we do it in different capacities, like I said, but like, it doesn't even have to be a big deal. You know what I'm saying? It's like, just sit down and be willing to ask questions for a minute and then switch, right? Like, that's the perfect icebreaker. Okay, you talk for 30 seconds and then I'm going to stop you and the other person talks, because you also got to learn to talk and you got to learn to listen. And I think storytelling is both of those.
Yeah, when I used to work for a member of Congress, and I lived in DC, and I remember my first day on the job, my internship coordinator was like, "Okay, you're gonna do an informational interview with everyone in the office." And I was like, "What is an informational interview?" You know,
a one-on-one. That's all.
No idea, right? What that was or what that meant.
Oh no.
Am I back?
Yep, you're back.
You're good.
Okay, cool. I had no idea like what that meant. But when I did it, I saw the power of like having some pre-prepared questions, and I saw the power in like how those types of things really break the ice and set the foundation for strong relationships. So if you're listening, if you're a young adult, if you're a youth, even if you're an adult, to be honest, because there are adults, professionals out here who are not the greatest public speakers, are horrible at communication on the job, have no idea what an informational interview is. I would definitely say Google that.
You know what I tell my students, and I tell my colleagues, I tell this to my staff, I say the first question, if you don't know what to ask somebody, we from Chicago, what neighborhood you from and what school did you go to? Like, that's how you kick it off. And before you know it, sometimes the floodgates open because there's just so much. You talk about, I was in that neighborhood. You find the commonalities, and before you know it, the storytelling begins. And, and that's how relationships are built, right? And those relationships lead to so many other things. And so that's kind of foundation for me.
Yeah.
So when you talk about that storytelling and looking at kind of our narratives right now in our communities, and looking at folks really being able to tell a story from their true foundation, right? Like, as Black people, I think some of us struggle with where our I personally have, right? Knowing what my culture is, what my lineage is, what my African heritage is. So if we lack that, right, and some communities are lacking that right now, how do we tell true stories?
I think, this is what I think. When I coach young people and I help them, and I help people with like interview skills, the tell me about yourself, I always tell them, think about your character. Your character, right? Like, what are some things that you know to be true about your character? I am a lifelong learner, right? I'm a student of life. Share those things, and then from there you can talk about how you have applied your character, right? I'm a lifelong learner. In my previous job, I did this, right?
Yeah.
How you have seen your character manifest, and also how you have built your competence around those character traits. I think, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
What do y'all think, Matt, Carmen?
I think that's spot on. I think one of the things that gets overlooked, even to the last point, was relationships and building those relationships. And like, people want to work with people they like,
Yeah,
right?
took the
Like,
word right out of my mouth.
yeah. So like, being able to like tap into that, your character, and find commonalities with the person across the table from you is huge, or across the phone, or whatever the medium is. But like, that skill is definitely way overlooked.
And at the end of the day, don't you want to work with somebody you like?
Yeah, exactly too. Yeah.
I learn to work with those you don't like too, and that's okay. But I like to ask the question a little different, because sometimes young people have a hard time identifying their character, right? As young people, it's like, I'm like this, or it's hard. I ask the question, who's somebody you look up to and why? Why do you look up to that? What did they give you that you are like holding on to and you love? And that also builds the relationship, because a lot of times we pick our parents or like, this one mentor. And again, we all can like, oh yeah, I had this one mentor that did this and this and this for me. So my question when it comes to young people, and even adults, before I ask you about yourself, because sometimes we're nervous to like expose our own selves, it's easier to say, oh, I like this person because they do blah, 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 blah. And I grab these skills from them and I want to be like them in these ways. And then before you know it, they're talking about their own characters and what they offer, right? And so that's been a way that I kind of go around, the personal question, and I say, who you look up to, so that's a way that I've gotten there.
I'm right now, Carmen.
I think that's such a great tactic, Carmen. So something that I'll say is like, what of you is in me, right? What of you is in me, and I think your question gets at the heart of that, right? So yes, I absolutely love that. I'm sorry, thinking to myself like, who
I look up to. Yeah, my father. I look up to both my parents, and my dad told me, live your age at your age. So when you're 18, be 18. Don't be trying to be 21. When you're 21, be 21. Don't try to be 30, right? Like, and that has stuck with me forever. And he'll sit back and he'll laugh and he'll be like, remember I told you? Yeah, I told you that.
yeah, that's a good one too, though. You know, I was literally sitting around the table the other day with my aunts, and they were saying how my grandfather used to say, if you don't have to work as a kid or a young person, don't work, because the day you start working, you'll be working for the rest of your life.
That's right. That's right. Take your time.
Right. Take your time.
So let me ask y'all this. I read an article, and it was about really digital literacy was the heart of it. But one thing that stuck out to me was the mentorship piece being the reason why a lot of our Black and brown folks aren't getting into the STEM kind of industry, right? The math, which is a creative industry, cybersecurity, creative, right? And what it said is that calculus, a lot of people are failing calculus, not due to not having the skills, but due to not having the confidence to get through calculus, right? Not having the right mentorship, not having the right support. And so when you look at calculus and you look at computer science, and that being the entryway, right, to one of the most creative fields, can we talk a little bit about kind of that importance of digital literacy right? In this day and age of kind of a virtual state of mind.
Mm.
You guys mind if we dip into that a little bit? Because I think it's important as we go and we look at our education system changing to completely virtual, as we look at how that's being done in an equitable way for kids that may not, right? They may not have Wi-Fi, may not have a computer, may not know how to work it at home. So how do we look at creating better ways of that digital literacy? And I'll just leave it open-ended question about that.
I mean, that's pretty interesting. You have a take on it? Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you're first. You're my guest. But we got to take, though.
The access part of that is key, right? Like,
yeah.
The access to these mediums that they're expected to learn or use on a daily basis is critical. So like anytime that like schools are fundraising and all these different fundraising things happen, like that should always be in the back of people's mind, is like, why are we raising this money? Like access should be part of that. And that's a lot of digital literacy is access related. But also on digital literacy, like to the mentorship piece, like having people, like something that I do with my mentees, and a lot of, you may not know, I'm Black, white, and Mexican, but a lot of the things that I do with my mentees is try to show them what I'm doing for work and try to get them to understand what I'm doing for work. And a lot of that is like email or digital communications and things like that, where they may not have had that before. They may not have had that mentorship piece of it before. And someone kind of showing them the ropes, essentially. So I think the access and the mentorship are huge there.
Yeah.
I struggle with this whole conversation now that we have entered into this virtual world, because I feel like I'm big on interpersonal, I'm big on relationship, I'm big on hands-on, right? Like I am a hands-on learner. I am a throw my head in it, head first kind of learner. It's difficult for me to be behind a screen and looking at it. I need paper, I need to write, so I struggle. And I feel like young people, so in regards to like learning virtual, learning calculus, learning these things, it's important. But I think we got to make them feel good as they do it. And I feel like because we're so consumed with insecurity of it and feeling like maybe I don't belong there, you're like, nah, I'm not even going to pay attention to it. So figuring out how to make people feel good about it. And I have 2 teenage sons. And for me, I'm like, let me tell you how you're going to use this in real life. I mean, I need you to know like how this works, because they're so removed from what because they're like, it's school and school sucks. Now I don't want to do this. And I'm like, no. Come and do this math for me over here. Let's go, and really trying to make it like real for them is important. Seeing people that look like them doing the work is important. But also like, my fear is that virtual state of mind, right, is gonna take away personal state of mind. And I don't want to be a different person virtually than I am in person. And so I'm very nervous and scared about the virtual state of mind. And again, because, my program specifically at Build, it's like gardening and, artwork and jewelry making. And like, how do we do this? Okay, we're going to make packets. We're going to send them home to you. And we're going to talk over the phone, or we're going to go on the computer. Like, forget what you have access to. I'm going to meet you where you're at. But then also trying to look at how funders, how we can have conversations with funders specifically right now to be sure that it's not that a young person just needs a laptop. A young person needs Wi-Fi. They need a laptop. And they need to understand how it functions. And they need to understand, and if you got to get on the phone and walk them through it for an hour first, that's the way that we have to reshape our work. to get young people up to that level in terms of mentorship. And that's, this shift that we've taken. It's like we were slowly trying to make sure young people have access. And now it's like, you need access now, or else you're going to miss out. Right. So it's like extremely important that it's like you take the time, you talk to that young person, and you figure out what are your limitations. How do I make sure to communicate that to the organization and to our funders so that they can reshape these budgets, that then we can, as nonprofits, be able to give them what they need very directly, So sometimes it's over the phone before we get to a full, scope of virtual mind,
Let me just say this. Y'all are hitting the nail on the head. I think, okay, so a few things, like just going back to the question, how do we get young people engaged in these like science, technology, engineering, and math? I really think it boils down to how it's presented. So for example, when I was young, I did not like math. Like I hated it. I was in physics. I hated it. It was just the hardest thing for me. But when I got older and I started getting interested in marketing, right? I started to get interested in marketing, and I started to get interested in language. And I saw how breaking a word down I can learn how to break a word down in simplest form by watching this math video, right? By looking at this math video. And I think, young people of color, I think we're drawn more to like story. We're drawn more to like the liberal, right? So how can we present science, technology, engineering, math, and creative in a way where it helps them see the benefits of math? So nowadays, right, I like to watch hard ass math videos on YouTube, right? Because I'm interested.
You're a nerd.
I am a nerd. That's okay. That's all right. But when you think about, right, like we had this conversation before last week about creativity. And we think about creativity is problem solving. Getting life is problem solving. I always tell young people how like think about your life as like X plus M plus Y times C equals 26.
And then I'm going to change it.
Right. It's multiple ways to get to that 26. Multiple ways to get to that 26. You just got to try to figure out what's the way to get there most quickly. So I think it boils down to presentation. And then when you all were talking about like mentorship and access, I have to learn this the hard way. So my business is in business innovation, design and business innovation. And one thing I had to learn about going into the realm of like systems design, things like that, it's not a lot of people that look like me. So I had to get comfortable talking to white people and asking white people for help, and also recognizing that you might be the first. You might literally be the first. You may be the first mentor, legit. So I feel like, there are, and we talked about this earlier. I think Carmen mentioned this about just communication. I think we have to teach our young people how to be agile in their communication styles. How do you go into a space and be able to talk to a Carmen, a Matt, a Chris?
They don't have to worry about talking to us. That's not the issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Talking to us is not the issue. As much as it's talking to other folks who don't look like that.
Yes. Being agile in communication to get what you need. To get what you need, because there's a guy that I met, his name is Casey. He's a mentor of mine. White guy that I met at General Assembly. And he's my mentor because it's not a lot of Black people in this space. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on that. Sometimes it's as unfortunate as it is, we have to continue to go out of our community to get what we need, until we're able to build that community on the inside that's made up of people who look like us.
That's such a great point, especially about being the first. Like it has to start somewhere, like a foundation has to start somewhere. So really it is about like the people on this call doing our part to be mentors and to like show other people the way. I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, that's why I always say we can't do this work without education. There is no way we can do this work without education. We can't.
Right.
But sometimes the education comes from the stories that our elders and our mentors share with us, that then we share with others. And as we elevate, ourselves, I was having a conversation with some of my girlfriends, and it was like, there's a point where like you agitate, you work, you do it, then you run it, then you become a mentor, and you train others, then you become, more in leadership and elder, and making sure that young people have that knowledge, that they're the ones who are becoming the next mentors and the next agitators. And so that storytelling continues, even in a virtual life, even in all the things, we have to continue to share and empower. And that's the space that I'm in. Like, how do I take my staff and make sure that they're empowered and they feel like that they have my lessons, their lessons, and they share with the young people, right? I have my mother's lessons, my father's lessons, my grandmother's lessons. I pass it to my staff. They pass it to their students. Those stories are so important. Any field.
In some ways, Carmen, this virtual space might not be so bad, because I think that like it may not be so bad it may help what you're saying, because I know now like we're getting to record things like never before. We're getting to be able to capture our own stories and our own thoughts and ideas to pass them along.
Let's lean on this one as you guys bring that up in terms of storytelling and learning from each other. How do we embrace continuous learning internally, right? But as you two in your organizations respectively, how do your organizations embrace that continuous learning?
So go ahead, Carmen.
No, you go.
So for me, this is continuous learning is something that I am actually pretty passionate about. And to the whole point of this, like the skills gap, I don't think continuous learning it doesn't have to be like education, right? So like what I preach to my people, and I probably am beating a dead horse with this one, but I'm almost always in every situation thinking about how can I do that better the next time that I do it. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be something very small. And part of that thought process and that growth mindset is learning, because you can't get better if you're not learning. So what did you learn from doing this task that you can do better with the next time? So like constantly, my wife, I probably drive her crazy with that too, because I'm just always, I do it in everything. I do it in my personal life. I do it at work. I do it with my music, like your art. Like, how can you get better? How can you do it better the next time? And I think that is really powerful, and like fostering that environment for my people is very important to me. The organization, like we have training budgets and this and that, and we really encourage people to like, it's consulting. So you're kind of working on shorter term gigs. We encourage shadow opportunities and like learning from seeing, because for me too, and Carmen, I think you mentioned this, I'm not a learner by just reading or just listening. Like I have to get in there, I have to do it, which I think is something that held me back for a really long time, like not embracing that or really even knowing that about myself. So like that self-exploration part of continuous learning, I think is huge too.
Yeah. I like to burn myself when I learn. I'm like, oh, it's hot. Let me see. I'm not so sure you're telling me the truth. That's how I learn. Like I straight go for the fire. But at Build, our continuous learning is, we're providing the training, we're asking the questions. What do folks need? How can you be better at what you do, and how do we provide those training and bring in those experts? But also debriefing and reflecting. is huge in the work that we do. So if there's ever an event, there's a program, at the beginning, you make a plan. At the end, you discuss, did you meet your goals? What went wrong? What were the variables? What happened? How could we make it better next time? And think about how we can do a better job. So every single event we have, every project we do, there's always going to be a debrief at the end to say, what did we learn and how can we do it better next time? What were the successes? What were the challenges? What were the failures? Something that I was having a conversation today with a bunch of my colleagues, and it's like, how do we have communities of practice? And communities of practice is nothing new. Lots of organizations and coalitions and groups are doing this. But I think it's really important. We're an organization that is growing rapidly. And maybe COVID has, stunted our growth just a little bit, but I don't think it's going to last too long. And we need communities of practice because we're all youth practitioners. We're all working with young people, but how can we learn from one another? Because there's such a wealth of knowledge. There's so much passion between everybody at the organization that, like, how do we come together around the different things that we want young people to gain versus one department owning it by itself? You know what I'm saying? And I'm saying specifically around civic engagement. It's like so many of our different, groups and satellites want to do civic engagement. How can we come together, learn from one another, come up with some ideas, y'all practice them in your own ways, and then come back together and share your learnings, share your successes, share your challenges to be better. And so that's something that I'm really, really, really moving in the direction of communities of practice. Because we can learn from one another when we actually take theory and practice it.
Yeah, I love all of what you all are saying. Just to build a little bit on what you're talking about, Carmen, in terms of community of practice. I every time I go out and I do trainings or I lead something, I always encourage people to think like a scientist, right? Think of the person next to you as your science partner, right? Because when we think about ourselves as scientists are experimenting. So when I used to run a workforce training, my whole goal was like the more I could just sit back and watch, the better. Right? The more I could sit back and watch this experiment run and be successful and fail, the better, because I could take that information and go back to my team and talk about how do we rapidly iterate on this? How do we rapidly, adapt this? So when it comes to community of practice, I think, thinking like a scientist, and then also at the same time, truly embracing cross-collaborative experience. Truly embracing cross-collaborative experiences. I don't think you cannot do workforce development or workforce innovation successfully without cross-functional partnerships. There's way too many people involved, from employers, funders, young adults, job seekers. It's too many, government, right? It's almost like every institution in the system is involved in this. So I think that, cross collaboration and some really cool things that I have seen people doing, Chris and Carmen, and that in terms of like continuous learning, just to like give you all some more examples. So I have a friend who works at Google, and Google calls their office campus. Like, are you on campus? And I love the idea of that, right? Because a lot of times I think companies are failing to realize that once you hire me, you are, yes, hiring me to do a job, but you're also paying me to do a job, but you're also paying me to learn. Because if I don't continue learning what you need, the likelihood of you getting what you need may not happen. And he was talking to me about how Google has a knowledge management system. They have an internal knowledge management system where, like, anything you want to internally, anything in the organization, it's like Google. It's like a literal Google of knowledge that people can just like look up stuff that they want to learn, take courses, post writings, things like that. And then last but not least, I thought this is a really innovative idea. My aunt, she works at Allstate, and she was talking to me about how at Allstate they have something called a talent share, where basically if you work in one department and let's say your 100% of your job is broken down into different percentages, you can take a percentage of your job description to go work in another department and kind of like get a sense of what they're doing in this department, see what it's like to actually do this job, because the company is like, we were ready to move you to a new department to try something different, then you have to pick up everything and leave because now you have a new interest. And you want to learn something different, right? So I think that those are some really cool ways to begin thinking about how can we continue our learning.
Yeah.
Something real quick, something that has always stuck with me, and just everything you guys are saying, for me, this comes back to LeBron James said once that you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. You have to be able to put yourself, if it's talking to people that don't look like you, if it's trying to learn something new, like if you're okay being uncomfortable, like you'll learn and grow and you'll get through that and you'll keep going. Like that's always been something that's powerful, that's stuck with me. And it's true.
Yeah.
Very true. I think mine is something similar. Look, we're almost at 60 minutes. So now this is the part where everybody just gives their prophetic quote. But I would say, to add to that, mine is if you want to go somewhere you've never been, you have to do something you've never done. Yeah. That's mine. What's yours, Carmen?
I'm like, wait, you didn't prepare me for my quote. Hold on.
That's my bad.
No. I mean, I'm a piggyback off of Matt and just say, you got to push past the fear. When there's a fear, you got to push past it. And that's the only, what you think you can't do, you got to go for it, and you're like, you know what, maybe I can. Let me go ahead. I'm nervous. I'm shaking. But what I do tell people is the spirit will move through you. You ain't got to be religious. You don't have to be none of those things. But when you push through that fear, the spirit moves through you. And before you know it, magic happens. So. And
everyone has fear. That's like, fear is normal. Like you should be comfortable just understanding that, like, it's okay to be afraid of something. It's all right.
Yeah. You could be nervous when you go to that job interview, but don't worry, you'll be okay. You'll get past it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you'll be better for the next one.
Yeah. Chris, what's yours?
When I look at the skills gap, I don't look at it as just a challenge with organizations. I look at it as a challenge with the youth too. And we need work on both ends. I think that organizations have to do a better job of really diving into soft skills and looking at non-traditional ways of people getting educated, right? And what are those ways, and what is the standard that they set as an organization? But then also as young adults, as we try and dig into who we really are, right? What our true narrative is, I think it's important that we really build a sense of confidence around who that is. I think a lot of young adults are lacking what that confidence is because they're not building a strong support system, and they're not setting their eye on a prize, and then enjoying the process in that prize. And I found myself in those shoes, a lot in my younger days, and that's a big reason I started Your Passion First. Is you got to put your passion first as a young adult, regardless of what skills you have. If you have zero skills, then you put everything you got towards what that passion is. And if you continue to push and build the right support system, and you find an organization that really feels the same values that you feel, and not feel forced to dive into them, but feel like you're wanted by them, I think that we'll be able to build a more creative economy and really close that gap.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much to Carmen and Matt for joining us today. For all of the young people watching, I know the young people that I work with, that I have worked with, they are phenomenal, like phenomenal. Sometimes I'm offended when I hear people say that there's a skills gap, because these young people are so freaking smart, genius. We just have to be willing to give our young people a chance. Matt, Carmen, thank you all so much for joining us.
Matt, I want to make sure you could give your representation, your shout out for what
Service One. It'll be dropping on Spotify, Apple Music, all the different platforms tomorrow. Should at midnight happen, so we'll see, barring any technical difficulties, but it should be out there. This project is just beats. I do MC work and rap as well, but this one was one that I had. They're all built a similar way, where I chop my samples down and layer them on top of each other rather than looping. So it's got a different sound. But yeah, check it out. Always willing to receive feedback, so feel free to let me know what you think. And if you're out there making music or making art, like, I'm always looking to collaborate with people too. So check it out. I think it's worth a listen, and let me know what you think.
Thank you so much. Carmen, can you tell us a little bit about how folks can get engaged in Build?
Yeah, buildchicago.org. We're located at the corner of Laramie and Harrison. We're getting ready for summer program. It's going to be amazing. We're saving summer for our youth. So please look us up, Facebook, all the things, Build Chicago. And that's, 773-227-2880.
Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We're so happy that you were able to join this chat. It was great.
Yeah, thank you. Cool.
We'll catch up again. Hey, y'all, we appreciate everyone out there joining.
Our viewers, yes.
2 things we want y'all to remember. Again, Walk the Walk this Saturday, 12 p.m. We'll be at Austin and Madison, Moment of Silence. I believe it's starting at noon. There will be different motivational speakers along the path, stopping and discussing not only what our demands are and what we're looking from not only the police department, but the whole legislature of our economic state and our political state here. What changes do we want, right, collectively as a whole? And how can we bring 2 communities together to try and, really bring some of those changes to light? So proud of my boy Damien, doing an amazing job of organizing that. One other shout out to AAABNA, Austin African American Business Networking Association. We're working on some projects with them along Chicago Avenue. We'll be launching the first project of the Soul Corridor. So there's some planning going on there. Stay tuned. We're really looking for anyone involved in art, music, entertainment, sports, and culinary right now, just to build this community, build this collective circle here. And so just appreciative so much of you, Carmen, and you, Swerve, my boy, my dog. Nikki, you too. Appreciate you, girl, always, every week, putting in work. So thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah. As I always, I haven't really ended it like this, but one of the quotes I think are important. In order to follow your dreams, you got to put your passion first. So keep doing that. Y'all are doing that. We're doing that. We hope y'all keep doing that together. We'll create some amazingness together, and y'all have a good one. All right.
Have a good one.